What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Happy Tuesday to everybody. I hope everyone survived their 420. Great guest for you this morning. Jay Christianson, founder of Tin Sheets in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Jay, really good to see you.
Yeah, good morning, Jensen. Good to see you again.
You are crushing that salmon shirt right now, my friend.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not the chroma key for my camera. Otherwise, we'd be like transparent right now.
I really like it. So, for background, Jay and I met when Jay was the owner, operator, winemaker, host extraordinaire of Canyon Winds out on the western slope of Colorado winery. And we got to do some fun stuff with Colorado wine. So always really liked, this is interesting. We're going to talk about strategy and planning a little bit, and I'll let you tell about your company. But I always remember how thoughtful your strategy planning, your brand was when it came to Canyon Wind. So I'm very interested to see kind of how that has parlayed into what you're doing now. So we should have had wine. I feel like we should have.
That's a missed opportunity right there.
Now I really feel like we are completely blowing it right now, Jay. So tell us just real quick, Tin Sheets, this venture for you, and give us some background on it.
So my wife and I got to a point where we wanted to stop managing the winery and keep growing, sort of hit a financial break where it was going to be borrow a huge amount of money and not make any money for like 10 years to expand, or sell the winery and start doing something else. So that's what we went with. We decided to launch Tin Sheets as sort of the parent company for our two major ventures. We have our advisory consulting side, and then we have our travel side. So we wanted to travel, so we ended up living in an Airstream for a year, traveling around the country, hitting like 39 states and like 10,000 miles. And that's the whole Tin Sheets thing. So, they refer to Airstreams, even though it's aluminum. I guess it's like tin foil, right? Aluminum foil, tin foil, it's interchangeable, even though it's aluminum. Airstream, same thing. So we did Tin Sheets to the wind as, we were the wine world traveling in the Airstream around the country. And that's what we did to get started on the sort of naming process. 10 sheets to the wind, alcohol, fun. It was a good time.
That's perfect. I love it. It's thoughtful. I'm not surprised at all. It's just thoughtful. It's playful, and coming from a place of like depth, which I think is always something that I expect from the for sure. So glad to hear that. All right, so you're getting into that role, and the reason that we wanted to talk is because in this moment of COVID-19, there's so much uncertainty. There's so much trepidation. Just we don't know what to do, and every moment feels like whatever plan you had 35 seconds ago is completely irrelevant. All of that is at play right now. And so as we start to come out of this, we see some states are talking about reopening restaurants specifically. Give us some high level of the thinking that you think is important, and maybe take us back a little bit, actually. Let me not push forward too much. Take us back to just where we're at right now and what you advise people to kind of just take a moment to think and to plan just a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So a little more background, I suppose. When we were running the winery, we didn't have time to do anything for the community. We had 80 hours of work a week per person, and there are only two of us. And so it's never all getting done. So we didn't really give back to the community is kind of the sort of step that I struggled with. And so when we sold and then got out of the Airstream world and settled in Colorado Springs, I joined Search and Rescue here. And Search and Rescue is kind of this really broad, responsive agency that deals with all sorts of crazy stuff. And one of the requirements is something that's called ICS, which is the Incident Command Structure or system, depending on who you listen to. And it was designed by FEMA. Where they promptly told everyone never to use acronyms, and then everything for like 8 series of classes is nothing but acronyms. So ICS, Incident Command Structure, FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, and then it goes on and on. But those are the two that I've used, and I'll try to limit it so I don't go into too many more. But they have ICS as a planning structure for how to deal with incidents. And then they promptly teach how complicated it is and how broad-reaching it is, and it can cover hurricanes and wildfires, and that's actually where it came from. CAL FIRE created this structure for dealing with these massive fires and running thousands and thousands of people and making lots of decisions really quickly and responding to what's going on. And so I kind of got into the ICS world a little bit and took a lot of classes, and they all deal really with big scale, but they're all very financially focused too. And so we wanted to appropriate that into a system that works in the smaller side and works for business and takes into account planning and responsiveness and management of resources in a timely and responsive fashion that deals with communication, that borrows from emergency management, but can apply to daily life. And that's really the key detail that we wanted to create BARCS, which is our business administration response system. I have a search dog in search and rescue, so BARCS, I figured it would be fun. But we really wanted to focus on creating a system that would help people plan. And before you get into the nitty gritty of the system, the key detail of that whole thing is that you have to plan. And there's sort of three things that come up with planning that matter most to everything for me: is who's going to be doing the planning and who it impacts, the time frame that the plan is applicable for, and every plan can't work without what we're calling SMART objectives. And that is directly stolen from ICS. SMART stands for specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timely.
So many acronyms, man.
I know. They talk about all, yeah, no, I mean, they're like, yes, don't use acronyms. Here, learn what the SIP flop is.
Especially in this moment right now where it's like, okay, the PPP and the SBA and the CARES Act is an acronym that I can never remember. And
ooh, that's a good one.
The IPO. It's like UI. I'm like, what is UI? You have a urinary tract infection? I don't know. Unemployment insurance. Yeah, I totally should.
I could have used your interface actually. So, you know.
Yeah, actually UI UX. I refer to that a lot more. So yeah, the acronyms sometimes simplify our language. I respect it and appreciate it. And at the same time, it's just like a gobbledygook coming out of my mouth.
The compound acronyms are even better, where the acronym like SIP flop is a great one. The P, the first P, is actually PIO. So it's an acronym with an acronym. You know, it's like a crossword puzzle of language.
Oh, yeah, not smart enough. I am clearly not smart enough. But I like what you're saying. Plan, have a plan. I always think about just keep making decisions. You're going to make wrong decisions, but the second you stop making decisions and actively be a part of that process, the second you start to be completely overcome by external forces. And so I can definitely really appreciate that part of it. Yeah. And so I like that. You also, it feels like not only is this something that you can apply just personally day to day in your business, but in this moment, the scale at which you were being trained upon is like people are dying, fires are burning down property. Like it's very heavy. So the intensity of that, do you feel like that prepares you for a moment like this?
For sure. Actually, I think the first sort of real ICS application that I was involved in at scale was a missing person down here in Colorado Springs that went for about a month and a half. And I ended up running a lot of the planning section or the logistics section, depending on the day, and running some group level, which is the next tier down from general staff, but involved in creating a lot of the very specific government documentation necessary to orchestrate. We had over 700 people operating in this incident, and it's a really powerful tool when used appropriately. And I figured that tool should exist for business. And I mean, ICS is free and you can use it, but it's not really applicable directly, which is why we created our own approach. But the scalability is the part that is really impressive, because technically we use it when we have, someone tripped and fell and you walk over and say hi. Your everything is that person, in the search and rescue world. And, as things mushroom out the bottom, they mushroom out up above. It's the same in business. And I think having a pre-plan in place to deal with incidents is important for the business side, but having a way to run planning when you're planning ahead beyond what's my budget for this category. Great. Who cares what your budget is for this category when you're talking about a pandemic, or when you're talking about a giant event that randomly showed up that you weren't prepared for, or anything else that you couldn't possibly imagine. I mean, we just had a donut shop down here have a car run through half their building. I'm sure that wasn't on their plan, but how are they going to respond? And the scope of response can vary tremendously based on what's going on and what the impact is. But the fact of the matter is, responding right away is going to cause more problems at some point than planning how you're going to respond and then responding right away. Whether it's a loss of money or whether it's a missed opportunity or whether it's all of the above, that the process exists for a reason in the emergency management world. So why has business people never been taught that? And that's what really got me, is that, like, oh, I've been responsive in business, and I could have done better if I'd stopped for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, and planned ahead for how to manage that. 1 hour is very infrequently going to be the damage causer. Even building pre-plans, you've got downtime, whatever the business is. It's AM and you have a PM service restaurant sometimes on a day off. Great. Or winter for a winery, or we have all sorts of clients sort of in a whole bunch of industries. Everybody has a downtime for a reason, usually. And if not, good for you. You need more staff. But that downtime can be filled with building contingency plans, is the catch term that gets used a lot. Having a plan for what if our loan gets called, if you have a loan. They're really important things to put some thought, put some pen on paper. They may not be the right answer, but at least it's the start down the right path.
Yeah. All right. I want to unpack a couple things, and I actually want to turn this towards the hospitality industry, because it's sparking all kinds of thoughts. You got my skin tingling right now. So this is one of the things we hear quite often in the hospitality industry, is we don't have enough time, right? And so I think about that and contextualize time, and I want to touch on that. I also think about the way in which we're reactive, and I talk about this a lot with clients of mine when we're doing concept development or brand on the hospitality side. Is there's a lot of people that are, call them either your bean counter or your gunslinger, right? Bean counters make a plan and they cannot deviate from the plan, and they have blinders on, and they just don't want to see the forest through the trees quite often. Then there's gunslingers. They don't want to plan. They're just going to get in there and shoot shit until they win, right? And they're going to trust their instincts. And I've done this before. I'm going to get in there. And I always talk about the football coach. Like, the football coach is watching hours and hours and hours of film. They understand their tendencies, strengths, weaknesses, all of that. They script out their first 20 plays, and then you adjust from there. Because neither having a plan and being so rigid or trying to be so fluid and not having a plan, neither of those tends to be the right answer. So I think about that a lot. I'm now the restaurant owner, the hospitality brand, the food and beverage brand, and thinking about creating a plan for myself. I'm all reactive. Everything is based on guests coming in the door. We're going to take them and create an experience for them. In the kitchen, I get a ticket, and I'm just going to create based on that. We're completely reactive, and it's the nature of the exchange that we have. What are you saying to me in that circumstance where I'm pushing back against the plan because
the military was really clever, and they created something that's called the EB loop, and it's basically a decision loop that was built for fighter pilots, right? You plan. I guess plan is sort of forcing plan in there where it doesn't belong. But basically, EB loop is that someone's a decision, so they observe, they plan, then they act or react depending on where it is, and it's a loop. Where you insert your thought process into that loop exists for being able to change whether you're active or reactive. And that was the point of it, right? A fighter pilot sees your plane and he's going to say, "Ooh, I should shoot at you." And then they're going to fire at you. And your reaction shouldn't be to, "Oh, they're firing at me." Your reaction should be, "I see the plane." And so you can change the decision loop. It's a commonly used term. I think that a restaurant being called reactive, while I'm sure many are, you get a ticket, you plan, or you produce food, is a bad decision. I think, using the expression proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance is definitely an important one when it comes to things like that. No one comes in. What do I do? Well, as opposed to you can go home and I need you to stay, and oh my God, 30 people just came in and I'm hammered, is produce a plan beforehand. And they don't have to be complicated. And it's the same with tickets, right? You know, I have a plan, I have a menu, I have a set plan, I have a volume of food, and you run the plan through. And then if it needs to change, it can change in a cycle, but you've got to deal with the cycle that you have. You can't deal with the cycle that you're in right now because you had to plan for it beforehand. I mean, that's the nature of the beast, right? And if you work from the hip all the time, you're going to either lose profit, you know, in your food cost world, or you're going to lose customers because you don't have enough food planned. You know, it's a simple, you know, how much food do I need for a week kind of thing. They're all elements of creating a plan, and building a plan with as much information as you can is the solution to all of this.
So I'm a small restaurateur. Yes, I agree with all that. I'm going to keep playing devil's advocate. I like this. So I am a small business owner, operator of a restaurant. I have a food truck, whatever it might be. Jay, I do not have time. I'm working way too many hours. 2 cooks didn't show up today. I had 3 interviews and they no-showed. We had 7 reservations cancel. I'm putting out all of these fires and I just don't have time or the bandwidth. It'd be nice to make a plan, but right now I'm just trying to survive. How do we get out of survival mode in that moment? I'm sure you hear that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And the key to that, and it is not a please hire me statement. The key to that is outsource a plan. You can outsource a plan to a consultant. You can outsource a plan to a friend. You can outsource plan to staff. Planning requires nothing other than brain power. And people are really good at it. It's what you do in your daily life, right? You wake up in the morning, you're like, what am I going to do before I go to work? Well, I need to walk the dog. I need to, you know, it's not a crazy concept to figure out basic planning. And putting the person in separate thought. So yes, separate the plan out, plan it beforehand, plan it on vacation. I mean, you can build them a year in advance. It doesn't really matter. But dealing with a plan for when you're absolutely crazy is definitely something that's there. And if you need to source that to someone else who knows the resources that you have at hand, use them. That's absolutely fine. Dealing with an incident, whereas, you know, pandemic, you were already running around with your hair on fire and you need to manage craziness. How do you do that? The key with a lot of incident management is finding a person, whether it's a spouse, significant other, best friend, dog handler who's bored, anyone, it doesn't really matter, and get them to be the point person for the incident plan. You are running your kitchen, you're running your interviews, you're running the fact that, you know, you are now handing out food to people in the street that you normally would be serving off the table. You're running out of, you know, portable silverware, the whole nine. You have too many logistical operations that you need to manage. Well, those are separate, right? Logistics and operations. But anyway, you have too many things that you need to manage, and you are the key person to manage them, that the oversight of the response plan should be passed or could be passed to someone else, even at the general side of things, to manage that. And that comes back again in a full circle, right? To proper prior planning. If you produce a proper prior plan, if you produce a proper plan for global pandemic, you're going to have a document that's going to be a general guideline for, ooh, okay, I should change my ordering, or, ooh, okay, I need to change the way my payroll is going to be structured because I'm not going to have people come in. And it doesn't have to be as specific as pre-planning for a pandemic. There's a lot of P's today. Holy cow. Anyway.
P's and C's, man. There's always a lot of P's and C's.
Yeah. But it could be pre-planning for forced closure. Yeah. Simple enough, right? And if that's a pandemic, it's a pandemic. If it's your kitchen caught on fire, it's your kitchen caught on fire. It doesn't really necessitate, you know, it's a difference without a distinction kind of thing. Yeah. So a little effort to build a pre-plan is really the terminology, is going to pay out large dividends. And sure, you're running around with your hair on fire and you're missing interviews, but taking 1 hour, you will write 3 to 5 pre-plans, and you can have things set for when things happen. And it can be as simple as a pre-plan as, I had an overserved guest. How do I deal with that? And that's a valid pre-plan too, because that's going to be much more frequently used And every time something happens to that situation, you can tweak it and figure out, oh, well, this is a great solution, or this didn't work the way I wanted it to work. I should have called the police an hour later or an hour earlier, whatever, it doesn't really matter. I think that pre-planning is really important. And that's, again, something else. You don't have time ever, right? The day your restaurant opened and you didn't pre-plan, you are now slammed. Great. Get someone else to write your pre-plans. Look them over. It'll take an hour of your time over a month to look them over. If you can't carve an hour of your time over a month, you're doing something else wrong. I mean, there is a life balance in life somewhere, right?
Yeah. The amount of time you have and what you spend your time on are distinctions worth being distinctions, because I think that's where we run into just the minutia of being a bunch of, 3-year-olds playing soccer. Everyone follows the ball around the field. Nobody plays their position. And so I think about this I talk about a lot. Like, I would much rather have a bad plan and a bad system than no plan and no system, because at least if there's something, you can evolve it, you can audit it, you can evaluate it, you can create metrics around measuring it, all those things. If there is no plan, even if you succeed every once in a while, I'd much rather you have a plan that fails a few times that then has the potential upside and stability and consistency. So I'm with you 100% on that front. So point person for your incident plan. I was very struck by that when you said it. It almost felt like sometimes you are too close to it. Like it's being a detective and the case has to involves your family, right? And they remove you from that because your objectivity is lost sometimes. When you own a small business like a winery, like a restaurant, you're so in it. Again, you can't see the forest through the trees. So maybe reflect on that for a moment, the importance of that, because it's really hard. Here's what I'd say to people is it's really hard when it's your baby to pass it on to somebody else and think that they will ever do as good a job as you. And the reality is they will not. However, in the moment of creating a plan, you're separating that process. Then they can put it in front of you, and now you didn't create it, so you can evaluate it objectively. Maybe touch on that a little bit, because it feels like that might be an unlock for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, and I absolutely agree with that too. And that's the root of where it came from for me originally, is that in the ICS world, right, is that you have, and they have a bunch of examples at the high level ICS classes. Poor Liberty City gets just destroyed. The school bursts into flames, and there's a radiological issue, and there's all these things. The mayor is overwhelmed. Well, they have ICS or IMT teams, incident management teams, who are professionals at managing incidents, and I'm actually on the team here. But that's exactly the reasoning behind it, right? The stakeholders, i.e. the mayor, the principal of the school, in this case, the restaurateur, the winery owner, the bar manager, whatever, they all have stakes, right? The bookkeeper is going to want records to be perfect all the time, and they're going to be really difficult about it because that's how they are. And that's great that they have their stake, but their stake is an interest that they are going to want to serve. And you, as the business owner, can't serve everybody's stakes and your own, as well as someone externally looking at the situation and saying, okay, the bookkeeper's got to relax here. You've got to relax on your perfect mission goal to be serving only food that can be served on a Melba toast. Like, gonna have to relax on that one, just 2%. And the bar manager, well, I'm sorry, but your mixology isn't going to work because we only have beer on tap and we have this much bar for you to work in. Sorry, we got to blend it together for this plan, for this response, and that modification of that compromise factor can eat a huge amount of time. And we've all been in meetings, right, where everybody is a stakeholder, whether it's board meeting or a meeting of a bunch of people, on a project. Everybody's a stakeholder, and everybody sits down and says, well, my idea is the way that this needs to work, and their idea is terrible, and the other persons are saying the exact same thing. And meetings just consume time, they consume energy, they create rancor and difficulty. Whereas having a point person who is capable, they can avoid all that by saying, look, I know your stake is X, but we've got to do Y, and that's my plan, and that's how we're doing it. Or that's how the pre-plan was written, and that's what we're following. And there's a lot of value to that, both in distance for evaluation's sake and for creating the cultural incident management within the restaurant, right? Because that in its own right is something that needs, or bar, whatever, it doesn't matter. That's something that needs management in its own, because everybody has an ego no matter what, and everybody wants to be valued no matter what. And if you put people in equal roles, there's going to be conflict when there's an incident where someone has to sacrifice something without a point person who is also disinterested in the situation.
What if you give that power to Julius Caesar, though?
We're not running a government here.
It feels like it within restaurants sometimes. There's a lot of politics for sure. So I want to touch on just kind of one last angle of thinking for this. The restaurant industry, wineries, food and beverage, hospitality, face-to-face interaction, it's all changing. It was already shifting. There was a lot of shifts. There was a lot of pushback against those shifts, and now it's been like really forced upon. Restaurants are going to have to rethink the way that they operate in a lot of ways, some good and some unbelievably challenging and heartbreaking. So I'm coming out of this. I now need to plan for a business that looks very different than the business that I know. What are some high-level thinking that allows you to get into that mindset?
Yeah. And so this is actually the key for us about why we're really excited about the Barks system, is that our primary business life before we started this planning stuff after the winery, and actually with the winery too, is customer experience journey mapping, right? There is a customer experience journey, and it starts with whatever it starts with. It doesn't matter. It bases on the business. It can base on how they found you. There's a lot of different key start points, and that interaction sort of follows a wave, right? And mapping out that wave allows you, and it's really just a plan, again, like anything else. Mapping out that wave allows you to evaluate, oh, well, I was forced to remove being able to sit down in a restaurant as a restaurant. Well, let's look at the rest of the customer journey. And there's a value point here where, I can interact with them outside of the restaurant afterward through email collection or, whatever the detail, it doesn't matter. And there's a detail here where I can deliver great food and I can deliver. Let's put it all together and make a package. I mean, to be slightly controversial, I am very anti-DoorDash in this time. I know that they're making a huge amount of money for restaurants and keeping them alive, and there's value there. But if I were a restaurateur, I would be doing the deliveries as a unit internally, because you can create a customer service impact that is more personal and more owned by your business outside of utilizing DoorDash. Now, don't think I'm poo-pooing DoorDash. Don't think that those of you who use it now are not doing all you can, because it's different for everyone. And the fact that it allows you to stay open is huge. So, I mean, they're good. Don't get me wrong. But I think that is an opportunity for improvement if you wanted to look at it that way.
Oh, I'm with you all the way. I'll say those guys are absolute vultures. So here's the thing. I separate the two, because there's lots of even my audience and contemporaries that I talk to quite often that will poo-poo delivery as a whole. Like, these people can't leave their fucking houses. Like, they can't come to my restaurant. I expect them to be here to get the full experience. And so we're trying to control their experience journey rather than just mapping it for them and creating the best potential outcome. So I push back. Delivery is here. I love getting my favorite tacos and sitting on my couch watching Netflix. I love it.
Who doesn't?
And most people do. What I don't like is the DoorDash charging 35% and the fees and all of that, and then forcing restaurants in a position where it's purely marketing. And then, to your point, you don't own that resource. That is not your guest. That's not your customer. It's DoorDash's. And so that, I really am highly, highly agreeing with you to the nth degree that we need to be so embedded in technology that we own those resources and are able to use them to the benefit of the hospitality community. So I'm with you 100%. It's two separate things. What DoorDash is, as far as it being the vehicle for delivery, we need delivery. People want it in their homes. Don't push back against the market. Control the resource. And don't let that be cannibalized by companies like a DoorDash or Grubhub or any of those.
And that's the key to customer experience journey mapping, right? There's not one path. There's a lot of paths. And so you have to map out all the paths that make sense. Again, it's a plan, right? And planning, it takes time and is difficult. Oh, well, deal with it. You're in business. you've got to be able to come up with customer experience journeys that work. And whether now it is 100% delivery oriented or curbside oriented, find a way to put your stamp on it, find a way to make it unique and different in you to engage the customer and to keep a customer. Because exactly right, as DoorDash, you're not the customer isn't the person eating the food, the customer is DoorDash for you. And that's an issue. Or not. I mean, that's a customer experience journey that you need to work with and decide if that's a journey that you want to foster or a journey you want to discourage or a journey that you can modify in a way that makes it more beneficial for you. And it's the same with all of the other customer experience journeys. And it's the same with all pre-planning. That they are all achieving the same goal, which is really back to the very beginning, what I talked about, meeting your objectives. And your objectives, again, they have to be specific. They have to be measurable. They have to be realistic. I don't want to be the only restaurant in the whole world. Sorry, that's not a realistic goal. They have to be actionable and they have to be timely. And if they can't be all of these things, it's a stupid objective and you should get rid of it and start over. And you'll never be able to produce a plan that'll meet an unrealistic objective. So, starting with objectives and knowing the path forward, even if the path forward is, I want to sell my food, I want to make people happy, and I want my workers to be happy. Put the rest of the stuff around it, right? I want my workers to be happy on Thursday. I want to sell all the food on Tuesday that I ordered on Monday. Whatever the details are, but fill in the details on the objectives. And a lot of the plans, especially when it comes to customer experience journey mapping, start to fall into place just because you know what your objective is. And that's a really big one, is you got to know what you want out before you can put anything in.
Yeah, it's funny. I call those creating those frameworks and the infrastructure the sandbox. We build the sandbox. Every grain of sand, every material in there is built for the success of the business. But being a creative myself, it's not about stifling creativity. It's about focusing it. So in that sand pit, you can sandbox. You can dig, a moat. You can make sand castles. You can make a sand angel. Whatever. It's all going to help the business flourish. And so I think about that customer experience journey mapping. Talk a lot about internal and external guests, which I think is important to think about your customer, that end customer, but also the journey internally of what it takes for them to be able to have the best output. Touch on that maybe a little bit, because that's the biggest part of our audience. The people that I'm most speaking to is what we call unsung hospitality heroes. It's like the people in the trenches that actually make shit happen, that are the mechanism for supporting the amazing entrepreneurs within this industry. So maybe touch on them for a moment, because I think it's important for us to think about a plan for them.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a really interesting point. As we've been talking at the business level, it doesn't have to work at the business level. This can absolutely work at the server level or at the bar manager level or at any other level you want it to work on. Really, the key is the plan ahead. And so, I think absolutely at the server level or at the delivery driver level, there are customer experience journeys that you can create that are going to have positive outputs for both you, for your company that you're working for, and everything else goes along with that, right? So if you look at a customer experience journey for an external delivery customer as a delivery driver, you have all sorts of options, right? You have how you initially contact them, when you choose to contact them, what you say to them, what sort of rapport you want to try and build, or whether, it's not necessary. And there's a lot of options for that one. You have how the delivery itself happens, right? Do you do it by hand? Do you add a little bow? There's 1,000 variables, right? And it's really looking at the data that you have. And as a server, I appreciate that you absolutely do not have business data at your fingertips, but there's nothing wrong with capturing your own. It really isn't terribly hard to capture, your average ticket price. Your business owner may not be super stoked if they found out, but at the same time, you're doing it for your benefit and their benefit. So I'd argue if they were really concerned about you capturing all the ticket values that you put in, that they're the ones with the problem, not you. But that's a totally different conversation anyway. But creating a pre-plan for you as a professional server, as a professional sommelier, as a professional bar manager to push that customer experience forward will do absolutely nothing other than make everyone happier and better. Like it'll make you better. It'll make your customer have a better experience. Even if it's the what are we calling it now? Delivery cocktails or whatever it is. As opposed to creating the total premix and just out the door, go, is if you created a 2-unit premix and had a small instruction, mix the two together over ice and shake. It doesn't even have to be complicated. Or mix the two in a pitcher and stir. You're creating an experience for the customer that has an impact on their experience, and you directly created that experience for them. And that is a positive interaction. And so creating ways to create positive interactions in every experience journey is great. And one of my huge ones for the sort of retail world, wine and that sort of stuff, is the after contact. Great, I came into your winery, I tasted your wine, and I left. That's not the end. I mean, it usually is, but it doesn't need to be the end. And creating a way to create a positive interaction with the customer outside of your venue after the initial interaction is huge. Email and text message, sure, they're fine, they're there, but you can do better than that. And that's a big one for me is, the appropriate quality follow-up. We're really big fans of getting people to write thank you notes. For the right customer, for the right situation, handwrite a thank you note. Great, your handwriting's terrible. There are services online where you can have a handwritten, it's done by a machine, but it's written with a marker and a CAD drawer or a plotter, written out for you and sent. I mean, there's a million ways to do it. They're all easy. You can pre-write messages. Personalization's better, but you can pre-write messages. It is reaching out and finding a positive way to contact the customer post-interaction is a huge point for customer journey mapping, because most people look at their customer journey map as over the second they walk out the door. Oh, maybe I want a good Yelp review. Well, guess what? You're in charge of that, not during the time only, but afterward. And managing that interaction is huge.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Man, we could talk about this for days. The biggest thing, I think, for everybody out there from every level of the industry, when you're thinking about, you own a restaurant, you're thinking about your guests, you own a restaurant, you're thinking about how to empower your internal guests, your team. If you're an individual on that team, how your plan affects the other people on your team and your guests. It's thinking about having a plan and getting habitual about creating plans, because the plan can be very small, to your point, or it can be about managing a pandemic and every level. Because sometimes I think we think I have to have a plan. It's like you have to have this 72-point ironclad, like unwavering plan. That's not necessarily the case. So I think just getting good at making micro plans might be an unlock when we talk about the temperament of hospitality people. So planning is going to be a big part. We're going to get this more. I like that and I appreciate that you laid some groundwork for us, because we're going to need a lot of planning in the now and the future of the industry. So yeah, I really appreciate the thinking. It's got me going. You got me fired up, man. I love it. I'm going to go downstairs and Betsy's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm writing a plan, Betsy. You need a plan for what we're doing right now. So
you did hit on a key point. Write it down.
Write it down.
Yeah.
Please write it down. On all the jokes of the best idea, this business started on a napkin. I scribbled it down on a napkin. You know what happened? They scribbled it down on a napkin. Like,
it's really easy to forget something that you're doing.
And you can start to judge it and evolve it. So I'm with you. Jay, playlist items. What are a couple things that get your brain going, man? I want to know.
So right now I'm reading it's a customer experience journey, just in a very different way. A book, 10,000 Naked Strangers. It's about being a paramedic in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm working on some medical stuff and trying to upgrade my licenses. So that's on that one.
It's a perfect title for a book.
Yeah, isn't it though? Really grabbing, Let's see. I have Mike Doty on the playlist right now. He's a sort of acid jazzy kind of reformed. He used to be the lead singer of Soul Coughing, so kind of funky and different. And then good working music. I definitely push down the Rat-a-tat path. I don't know. There's something about Rat-a-tat that's always fun. Let's see. What else is on the playlist right now? I don't know. If you really wanted to go the Netflix world, oddly enough, Handmaid's Tale again, because it's so real right now with people getting locked in. And man, that one's on the playlist right now, and it's almost a little too hard to watch because it's kind of close to home.
I found myself too watching like
Yeah.
War of the Worlds and Armageddon and stuff. Like all of a sudden we're in this, and all of a sudden we maybe like want to watch something else. Like no, that's when it's really bad. This is not that bad. Yet we're putting ourselves in a situation to think about these catastrophes in this
Although the
real.
do not playlist is Contagion right now. Like that's a hard no. Hard no.
Oh yeah, Contagion. I watched Outbreak at the beginning of this, laughing about it. I was like, oh, wouldn't that be funny? And then now I'm, stuck at home going, wow, this is real life. So Jay Christianson, my friend, I appreciate it. Really thinking about planning, creating a plan is so important, even if it's how you're going to attack today. So I'm grateful. I have my plan written down right here, Jay.
Nice.
Yes, sir. All right, my friend. Be safe, take care, and I'm excited to see what you have planned as well.
Yeah, me too.
All right, have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Plan. Have a plan. I really meant it when I said I would rather a bad plan and a bad system than no plan and no system. I always believe in it. You can just evolve it. You can always make something better, but having nothing it stresses you out because you're starting from zero every single time. So I just wanted to bring Jay into the conversation because it's going to be important for us as individuals, as companies, as an industry to have a plan. And it's really fucking hard when you have no idea. When you're like, dude, I'm just trying to get through today. So I get it. Just wanted to bring it up, and I'm a lot of acronyms to digest for sure, but I think it's going to be important. So get into the comments. I'm going to have Jay go back and give us a rubric for what all these mean, and we'll have a couple links up, but make a plan, even if it's just scribbled on a napkin. It can help. It really can. Tomorrow's shows, getting into beer. I was missing some craft beer. So I got Dave, the owner and brewmaster at Joyride Brewing in Denver. I guess he's actually in damn it, I can't remember what your part of town is called, Dave. I apologize. I'm sorry. Denver area. He's in the Denver area. And then Shawnee Adelson, who is with the Colorado Brewers Guild, and they have a beer called In This Together Pale Ale that was meant to actually tomorrow be judged at the World Beer Cup in Austin at the Craft Brewers Conference, which is canceled. Bummed. I was going to be there as well. And then our second show at 11 a.m. Mountain, Dave and Shawnee, 10 a.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Mountain, Chris Shields, who is in charge of all the education and awesomeness at Rhinegeist Brewery in Cincinnati, Ohio, one of my favorites. So we're going to have those two craft beer focused. I might be tasting a little beer tomorrow. Should be a ton of fun. You guys, be good. Have an amazing day. Appreciate you as always.